I spent my early 20s thinking that I had it all figured out, but I really didn't. You know that feeling when everyone's telling you what you should do with your life? On the one hand, you've got your parents and your teachers telling you to find stability, get a normal job. And on the other hand, you've got your friends and what you see on social media with people chasing their different dreams. And you're just there scrolling at 2 a.m., looking at Instagram of people apparently crushing it, whilst you're just feeling stuck or wondering if you're falling behind. I was listening to everyone's advice about what my 20s should be like. Get the highest paying job, climb the corporate ladder, figure it out now or you're wasting your potential. I was so busy trying to follow different blueprints that I forgot to build my own. I landed jobs, then I got laid off. And then I had to pivot and spent entire days just drifting, feeling directionless. And here's the worst part. I was harsh on myself for not having it all figured out. Every setback just felt like proof that it was going wrong, bit by bit. But here's what changed everything for me and what I wish the 20-year-old me knew. Your 20s aren't about having all of the answers. They're about asking better questions and living your life in accordance with those answers. And today I'm sharing the life advice that I genuinely wish I knew when I was younger. Let's get into it with the first point that underpins everything else on this list. Self-belief is the key. You need to believe in yourself. It sounds obvious, but please hear me out. When I was younger, I was my own worst critic. Every exam that I didn't do well in, you're not smart enough. Every time I got rejected from a job, they didn't want you. Of course they didn't want you. But the problem is when you don't believe in yourself, every obstacle, every setback just gives you proof that you're actually not good enough. You've got to realize, would you talk to a friend this way? Think about it. You'd give him hard, honest advice. But what self-belief really is backing yourself even when it's hard, treating yourself with compassion and taking it easy. Because in that moment when you're talking to your friend, you're not constantly slating him off. You're trying to give him hard but honest advice. And self-belief is really all about backing yourself even when it's hard and treating yourself with compassion and respect. It matters because everything else in this video and in life requires believing that you're worth the effort. And so whenever you catch yourself really feeling crap about yourself and slating yourself down, ask yourself, would I say this to a friend? And that helps you reframe it. So the foundation is set, but you cannot build alone. And that's where networking comes in. Now, you need to reframe what networking is. And it's so hard to do so with how cringe LinkedIn, for example, is nowadays. But it's not corporate and it's not fake. It's about building genuine connections. The cost of not networking is that you miss out on relationships and opportunities that others get through their connections. And of course, this matters because it exposes you to new paths, new jobs, ideas, and business and industries. And here's a fun fact that is so commonly thrown around. Over 70% of jobs are not advertised. Think about that for a second. If the power is in what you know, wouldn't it be easier to find a job? It's all about who you know. And that's how you find a lot of people get their jobs, not necessarily through job boards, but through networking and having contacts, knowing hiring managers, knowing people high up in a business. But here's how you do it. You've got to be curious and you cannot go into it thinking it's a zero-sum game. Because then the other person's going to see that, they're going to back off you. And you want to listen more than you actually talk. Pick up on what they're saying and feed off of that. Maybe they're talking about, for example, how AI is impacting their business. Well, why not go into a conversation about AI, an open conversation about it? When I'm on YouTube, I watch this interviewer called Chris Van Vliet. He often talks to wrestlers and he gets praise from pretty much every wrestler he interviews, saying that he really digs into their background and asks really genuine, interesting questions that other interviewers don't ask. And so they enjoy talking to him. Why do you think that is? It's because he's genuinely interested in their career. He's interested in what they do. Beyond the action that they do in the ring, he looks at their life, their personal life, their ambitions, their past. And here's a practical step. You want to message one person this week and ask about how they're doing, ask about their journey right now. And relationships, they open doors, but you need one thing that many struggle with. Discipline is a habit that will set you up for life. Motivation beats discipline. I talked about this years ago. And in 2020, I was trying to lose weight during lockdown. The first few weeks, I was motivated, I was excited, I was doing workouts on Zoom every single day in the week. But then it got boring, it got hard, and it was a bit inconvenient, right? Because who wants to starve themselves and eat just fruit and veg and not have a delicious burger? But the difference is I kept going anyway because I gave myself time to build that habit of working out. And the same with my gym journey in 2022. I didn't feel like going to the gym most days, especially after that initial excitement, those initial beginner gains, but I just went anyways. And because what discipline is showing up when that excitement is gone. And you may have read Atomic Habits by James Clear, and the fact that he says you fall to your systems, not your goals. And it compounds because even if you do 3 workouts a week, that's 156 in a year. That's 156 times that you've given your body a good workout. And it's repetitive, it's boring, it's not what shows up in the movies, and it can feel like nothing's changing. But it adds up to a lot over time. If you try and improve yourself 1% better each day, that's 365% in a year. What person does not want that type of return on investment in their self-improvement? But here's how you build it. You start stupidly small. Maybe you do 5 push-ups in a day. And you stack your habits. Maybe if you're trying to build a reading habit and you love drinking coffee, well, maybe if you go to a coffee shop, take a book with you, order a coffee, and read 5 pages whilst you're drinking it. And also track it. Maybe it's as simple as writing it down on a piece of paper, and every day you put an X next to it every time you've done that habit. And that motivates you as well and builds that chain, a streak that makes you feel guilty if you fall off the wagon. But here's a trap. Do not completely revert to what you were doing before. If you miss one day, it's not the end of the world. Just don't make missing a habit. And shift your identity a bit. Stop trying to think of yourself as, I'm trying to work out. Think of yourself as, I am someone who tries to work out. And that will subconsciously get you into the zone to try and go to the gym. It doesn't take 21 days to form a habit. It takes 66 days. So bear that in mind. The next tip, really, really important to go along with that discipline. And this is the advice that everyone gives, but they don't explain. See, I spent years from the age of 18 saving money with no real plan. And I was just hoarding it instead of using it as a tool. And there are 3 lanes that you want to think about investing into yourself with. Number 1 is skills, so things like public speaking, video editing, personal finance, any high leverage skill like sales or marketing or learning how to code and program. Financial, looking at things like perhaps investing each month into an index fund or putting money into a savings account each month. Small amounts add up, and do it early and often. And you will also let compound interest build as well. And the third lane, which I only realized after I turned 25, is experiences, because getting money helps in your 20s. But if you don't live for experiences, then it's worthless. It will pass by like a blur. I've been on 3 holidays in the last 5 months. And I've loved each of them because it was just a chance to try out new experiences. Try new things such as traveling, skydiving, paddle, anything. Because this enriches your life. Heck, I remember hot days in Istanbul when I'd sit and drink Turkish tea. These are the small things that actually add up over time and what you remember. Because why you want to invest in yourself is because it allows you time to compound. Your earning potential is almost tied to your skills, I was having this conversation yesterday with someone where they were actually saying to me that your 30s are your peak. And what my friend meant by that was that's when you are more financially set. That's when you tend to have a child and buy a house. But then you do start to get tied down a bit in your 30s. But your 20s are really the time where you should stack up those skills and stack up those experiences and knowledge to become a valuable asset to yourself. And that's what Naval Ravikant says. He says, spend your 20s building, not just spending. And don't get me wrong, spend on the stuff that you really want to if you can afford it. But otherwise, use that to invest in yourself and it's going to pay off later in your life. And some quick examples are a gym membership for me, right? I didn't start going to the gym until I was 22, but it built confidence and it started to help with my mindset and a better approach to life. Learning about AI through different online courses has helped me have more knowledge and also some really interesting conversations with very interesting people. And the mistake here is that you buy courses, but you don't finish them. There are a lot of cheap and free courses, especially on LinkedIn, to start. But pick 2 or 3 high leverage skills like sales or like marketing and try and spend £50 a month investing in courses, good courses, reputable courses that build these skills, and give yourself little personal projects to test the knowledge you've built, and try and have 1 or 2 memorable experiences a year as a minimum, whether that's traveling or trying out a new activity. And stop seeing it as an expense. This is something that I've just recently started to internalize. Start seeing this as a chance to build capital for the future. Now, investment is critical, but you need the right mindset. And that's where you've got to be curious. Trying new things and investing in yourself. But if you're not curious and you're not willing to learn and you're not taking what comes your way, then it's fruitless. It's not worth it. Because smart people know lots, but successful people never ever stop learning. You know what's funny is when I graduated in 2021, I felt like I was now educated. And then I realized very quickly as I was applying for hundreds of jobs that I knew nothing about real life. What it looks like is you've got to ask yourself when you're being curious, ask why things happen, ask how things happen. Be comfortable saying, I don't know, and being the dumbest person in the room. Because every situation allows you to learn, whether you're at work or you're out in the street. For example, in my job, I've had to tell people plenty of times, I don't know, could you help me explain this? And I've actually used AI to help me learn things and difficult concepts a lot quicker as well. There's no shame in that. And the more you learn, the more connections that you start to make between different ideas. And you'd be very surprised how easily that can happen. And curious people, they're more happy, they're more fulfilled, and they're more interested in day-to-day life. And they can adapt. I've got loads of interests ranging from history to tech and AI to gaming to wrestling. So you can start to build connections between all of these different things when you start being more curious. And shift yourself a little bit from being a pure consumer to someone who's a learner. Try and watch a video on productivity, for example, and test out one tactic from that video this week. Try out something that he's mentioned and see if it works in your life and reflect on it. Does it work? Does it not? Why does it not work? How can you make it better? But how do you do this? You follow your genuine interests. You ask yourself questions, try new things, and read outside your own bubble. For example, I am very interested in the gaming industry, even though I don't work in it. But there's so many connections to all parts of your life when you learn more about the gaming industry that it's hard not to take an interest in it. And the trap here, though, is that you don't want to think that you know everything. You want to just go into it with a beginner mindset. You're afraid to look stupid, and sometimes you can build an echo chamber if you don't expose yourself to new things. And that's where the growth mindset comes in. You've got to understand this unsexy truth that most learning won't have an immediate payoff. You've got to give it a couple years for it to really, really start paying off. And curiosity fuels growth. But the harsh reality is there's a lot of things that are out of your control. And after uni, I felt hopeless, applying to hundreds of jobs. I actually had a spreadsheet trying to track it. I couldn't control the job market. I could only control my daily applications. When I got laid off from my very first graduate job, it flipping sucked. But I just went into it with the mindset of, I can't control the fact that I'm being laid off. I can control my reaction, not burn any bridges, and try and move ahead towards finding a new job. And it's a whole different mindset entirely. Because you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you react. And there's real power in that. There's a stoic mindset called this dichotomy of control. There's a big circle of what you can control, like your effort, your attitude, your response to what happens to you, skills, your health, to an extent, and your self-talk, what you tell yourself. What you can't control, things like the economy, what others say about you, past mistakes, timing, and luck. And so reflect on this. Each week, ask yourself, what did I handle well? What did I waste energy on? What events could I have handled a little bit better? And maybe do a circle in your life of the main things that are going on around you and put it into buckets of what can I control, what can I not control. And focusing on what actually is controllable, it gives you agency, it gives you the power and the freedom to start moving forward in a clearer direction. The mistake is trying to control everything that's going on around you, because that just creates burnout. Giving up, that's the victim mindset. And comparing constantly to others. Accept what you can't control because it's freeing, it's liberating, and it redirects your energy from work to action. Now, the controllables keep you grounded, but one practice ties everything together. And it's the habit of reflection. Everyone normally skips this because everyone's obsessed with hustle. No one's talking about reflection. And I didn't used to do this before, but now I journal frequently because I used to grind without actually processing and taking a step back. But once I did, it became very interesting and freeing mentally to write down what I thought and reflecting on what I could have done better and what I did. But it's more intentional. You think about your own journey, your experiences, you ask questions, you try and pull lessons out for yourself to learn from. And actually reflecting on my purpose in life through religion has actually helped me understand my values that much better. And it's critical because your 20s are so chaotic. And without reflection, you just repeat mistakes again and again and again. Reflect on your career, your relationships, your values, your health, your mental health, and your goals. Ask yourself, what am I proud of? What am I struggling with? What is one thing I'd do slightly differently? Because, as Socrates said, an unexamined life is not worth living. If you go through your days like an NPC day to day, and you're not actually thinking about what you're doing and you're not reflecting on it, are you really living an interesting, fulfilling life? It's a compound effect because these small insights, they add up. Patterns emerge. You stop repeating the same mistakes. And reflection showed that I was so harsh on myself. So now over the last 18 months, I've been really trying to dial that back a bit. Now reflection gives you clarity, but it's essential for this final piece of advice because your 20s won't go as planned, no matter how much you try and plan for it. You know, the biggest lie that we're told is that you got to figure it out and stick to the plan. Now, I've had to pivot my career path multiple times due to layoffs and company reorganizations. And it's not failure, you just have to adapt. You try something, you learn, you adjust, you repeat. It's a cycle. And there's a book called The Lean Startup. And the essence of it is that you fail fast, but you learn faster. And it matters because you're not meant to have it figured out yet. Even when you're in your 30s, you're still figuring things out. Interests change, industry changes, life happens. So in practice, what that looks like is you experiment, you try something without committing forever. Maybe start a YouTube channel, document your journey. You iterate. Your first videos, they feel very stiff. But then you adjust and you feel a little bit more natural talking to a camera, which is still one of the most awkward things you can ever do. And you reflect and you adapt. You look at the feedback on your videos and you iterate, you improve. Because formal education leaves you quite disillusioned. It makes you feel like you know what you need to know now. That's it, go and work. But you have to shift that to self-educating yourself. The difference is when you're aimless, you've got no direction. When you adopt that agile learning mindset, you have clear values and a flexible path. So set your direction, don't set a rigid plan, and build feedback loops. Every couple of months or so, check your alignment and see if you're working towards something that you actually want in your life. Be okay pivoting. It's not failure. Everyone has to do it. Everyone thinks that their career goes from here to here, this smooth linear line, but it actually goes kind of like this, zigzaggy. And focus on transferable skills. When I graduated with a history degree, I had skills like attention to detail, presenting, research. These are things that are quite transferable to many jobs, even in the IT space, even with a non-technical background like mine. I know someone who studied civil engineering, but then they've now made a career out of managing care homes and they're enjoying it. And it just shows you he didn't waste his time, he just learned what he didn't want. Your 20s is a series of experiments. A lot of them are going to fail, but each teaches you something, just like starting a new business. And the reality is the world is changing very fast, and it sounds very harsh to say, but we have to adapt. We're going to get left behind. The mistake, though, is changing too often without learning, being too flexible, never committing, and seeing a pivot as a failure. But the 20s is a chance to explore, not to get things perfected. And your path is never meant to be clear. Those are 8 pieces of life advice that I genuinely wish I knew earlier in my 20s. And the truth is, knowing this stuff does not matter if you don't actually apply it. There's one more piece of advice that I just couldn't fit in this video. It needed its own video, as this changed my life beyond just looking better. If you want to know what that is, watch this video right here. Peace out.